Before we start the podcast, I want to say that we recorded this back in December, as you can tell from the title here on YouTube. Now, right after we recorded it, I got pretty busy with some personal stuff and some stuff at work, so I didn't have the time or the real motivation to sit down and edit it. But just now, over the last week, I've sat down and really dug into animating it and editing it and doing all the effects and stuff like that. So I didn't want to waste the time that the two guys who were with me, Ctop and Panzer, put into recording. I wanted to, at least respect their time and eventually post the video actually in its entirety. The other thing is that I wanted to get this done so we can move on and record more in the future, some more up-to-date things about YouTube, about future games and reviews and stuff like that, because that's the stuff we like talking about. The other thing is that we were going into it thinking we were going to be talking about 2015 as a year in games, and we ended up just talking about like Fallout 4 and Planetbase and Just Cause 3 and Mordheim and stuff like that. So basically just the games that we've been playing recently rather than the entire year. However, I think the episode was pretty good. We had a lot of pretty good discussions, and I hope you all enjoy. So let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the YouTube Shop Talk podcast. I'm joined by Ctop.
Hello.
Who does what?
Oh, am I supposed to describe? Yeah, I'm a casual Let's Play YouTuber with a mostly indie game focus.
And then we have Panzer, who...
Hi.
No more spin tires, right? That was a while ago.
No, that was a long time ago. I'm mainly doing first impressions of games, all sorts of different games. So I jumped from genre to genre without really any restrictions in between, I guess. I did do Elite Dangerous for quite a while back now. That was probably the longest series that I did.
Ctop, you did Elite Dangerous as well, right?
Yep, still doing it.
That did pretty well for both of you?
Oh yeah, very well. I've held the #1 search result spot for that since April, and that's been the main driving force of my channel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, this one's a bit stranger because myself, I haven't played anything really new besides Fallout 4, which came out over a month ago. So I brought...
Oh my God, it's been a month.
Yes, it's insane. And I'm somehow still working on a video for it. But I brought both of these lovely guys on because they play other games than me and should bring other insights into what's going on currently. But also, which we just talked about before starting the recording, was it's, December, towards the end of the year. So maybe we'll have some discussions on what we thought of the year in general and highlights and year in review, that whole trope.
Whoa. I don't know what that was.
Thanks for listening, everybody. See you next year.
No, it's an alarm.
Okay.
It's an alarm. It's that thermal warning alarm from Elite Dangerous. And it,
okay.
I
you
thought I
playing
turned
it
it
right
off
now?
on my phone. No, that was from my phone.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why. It's
ridiculous.
supposed to be on silent, but there we go.
Fallout 4, let's get out of the way. I feel like the hype has died down, certainly. People are more so, after putting a lot of time into it, kind of figuring out its pros and cons. How much have you guys played it?
I'm about 30 hours in, I think. I haven't done too much. I've mostly just played it off by myself or streamed it a little bit. Someone actually ruined the ending for me. They whispered it to me during my stream. I was really pissed off about that. But other than that, I've been enjoying it.
I think I probably know what it was. Because that turned into almost, what do the kids call it? A dank meme at this point.
Dank meme.
Which, when people throw around that particular meme, that people who know what it is and the ending will know what I'm talking about. But it's really not the ending. Well, if you visit... I don't know. So many people on my Facebook page before the game came out were like, "Oh, X, Y, Z," and for everything. And it was like, they take these old classic comments, and the last, frame is this giant spoiler for the end of the game. Like it was just this sort of almost like a Rickroll of sorts. Like, how can we rig people into seeing the spoiler for the end of the game?
Well, so I don't want to know. So even if it was wrong, I still want to find it out.
I'm specifically making it vague to not talk about it. But basically, it's
Yeah.
become a joke at this point.
Okay.
And the main
So
joke
maybe
that's
it
gone
wasn't the
around,
ending.
it doesn't really spoil it because the ending is just, it's different in general. I mean, the ending's bad, but it's not that bad. Guess I'd put it that way.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to it. Jeez.
So it's more like spoiling a plot twist rather than the whole ending, I guess. Or like a major plot
I
point.
mean, it's trying to create a parallel here. I don't know. It's like saying, you know, the Star Wars prequels, Anakin becomes Darth Vader. Oh my God. It's like everyone knew that. Like, that's the only logical way the movies could end, sort of. So it's kind of the same thing with Fallout 4. Like, how else could they end the game?
Yeah.
Type of concept. But yeah. That's unfortunate that someone was that dickish to you. I eventually just like started hiding people or muting people on Twitter and Facebook because they wouldn't stop leaving me alone with it when I was talking about it.
That's the hard thing I've found about just like current TV shows in general, is because if you're following them on social media, sometimes they'll just post something on Facebook, post them on Twitter, like the big twist ending. They'll just blatantly put it on Facebook, and I see it and go, damn it. Well, now I don't have to watch that episode because I know how it ends.
Yeah.
And so I've had to avoid some TV shows on social media just for that reason.
And I think this had come up in... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Panzer.
No, I was just going to say, because when it comes to spoilers and all that, I guess maybe I'm a little bit different in the sense that when somebody posts like, okay, such and such happens in this game or TV show or movie, I'll look at that and go, well, okay, now that I know that, I want to know how it gets to that point anyway. So for me, even if I know it's coming, it's not really spoiling it for me, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
but I get that it's really annoying, of course. Yeah, so when somebody posts a spoiler without context, I'm just like, whatever. But I get that, you know, like, especially when you have to keep an eye on things like Twitter and all that. It's just, you have
it's my
to
own
be
fault
really
for
careful
following
what you
them.
say
I mean,
too.
what do I expect?
I think it obviously depends on the medium. You know, like, so let's say a game historically wasn't the actual plot and narrative wasn't really interesting. The only thing you cared about was the twists, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that case, like spoiling the twist or saying, dude, there's a twist, you know,
Yeah.
like that drives me crazy when people say, oh man, the twist ending is great. It's like, you realize
It's like,
that
yeah,
in
but if everything
essence
up
you
to
just
it's-
spoiled it.
Yeah.
by just
telling
saying
you there is a twist.
Yeah.
Yeah, that in itself is kind of a spoiler. Like, okay, so you're expecting something, and I mean, we know what like most types of twists are going to be, so you can start to predict them.
Yeah. So you're preoccupied with the game or the movie or
Well,
whatever.
that just
in
seems like
sense.
bad writing. If you don't care about anything in it other than something that's going to like inexplicably go wrong or something, then
Exactly.
that's just bad writing.
And that was what I wanted to say, was that if the only reason like you watch a film is just to see the ending or just to see that kind of payoff, then is the rest of the movie even worth watching, sort of? And I feel like
Exactly.
maybe Fallout 4 kind of falls in that category in a way. Like, the ending is, to me, kind of boring. It could have done much more, because the Fallout 4 lays out a very interesting world, and Bethesda does that really well. But they just don't follow through a lot of times.
They don't explore the world.
Yeah, like I had a great conversation with a friend of mine recently, and we were talking about Witcher 3 versus Fallout 4, both open world games, both games that have sort of history, because, you know, there's Witcher 1 and Witcher 2, and Fallout 3, not so much New Vegas, because that's sort of a kind of a side project, but both games have previous titles, and they're both sort of new worlds, and they're both RPGs, both open world. Like, they have a lot of similarities in that way, but both go about them sort of in different ways. Like, Fallout 4 has a lot of filler, sort of, and not much real story and real plot that happens, whereas Witcher 3 is almost, it's so dense with plot.
Oh yeah, I have trouble.
Even though it's
figuring
not
out that
main
game.
quest, main storyline. And so I feel like, so when you're going through Fallout 4, I don't know, it's like the way the gameplay melds with the story. That's what people really enjoy I think, because the gameplay of Fallout 4 is very addicting, which is why I have how many hours? How many hundreds of hours
Jeez.
in it already? Let's see. 240, yeah.
Oh, man.
So the whole, like, if spoiling the ending of a game or a movie ruins the movie, you kind of see where I'm going with that? Like,
Yeah, then it obviously wasn't good.
yeah, or it doesn't
it's-
stand on the other 90% of the
Yeah,
product.
because if you look at it from another angle, right? Okay, so if a movie or a game looks like it has a predictable plot, so for example, you get into it and go, all right, I think this is what's going to happen towards the end, and then something else happens that surprises you, that's a different thing entirely than something that you could predict very, very early on. You know what I mean?
Surprises don't make a good movie.
But
No, but I
they
mean, if
can-
it's not
anything.
predictable,
you
like if
can't
it's not that
rely.
easily predicted.
I would say, like, you can't rely on a twist to make something interesting, but it can certainly help. And I would say, like, a pretty famous example is, wow, it's been like 20 years. Can I say The Sixth Sense now?
No, yeah. I've
That-
never actually seen that movie, but yeah, I know.
You can rewatch the movie multiple times, and the fact that the ending is a twist totally makes the rest of it way more interesting to me.
Because you notice things.
Because
on
it's
your
not
second
like
watches.
it's not like the twist ending of, oh, it was all a dream. Oh my god. The twist ending is that Panzer is actually a car.
Yeah, jeez. You burp or
Oh, I swear the
backfire there.
bikes around here are ridiculously loud.
Yeah,
Panzer just lives under a bridge. Just
he's the old.
It
he's an
probably
actual
sounds
troll.
that way, doesn't it?
Why are you trolling?
yeah, but back into Fallout, like I have 30 hours and I'll probably play it a bunch more, especially you got Winter Break coming up. But I'm probably never going to beat the game. I'm probably just going to play a bunch of the side quests, maybe get more into the story, and then I'll probably stop playing it.
Well, let me ask
What?
you, what would you say the majority of your time is spent on? You're playing.
Like, what do you mean? Just like side quests, main quests, base building?
Well, yeah. The reason I ask is the friend of mine who I was talking about before, has maybe 85 hours in the game, and he said like probably half the time he's played has been building the bases.
Oh yeah, I've spent a lot of time doing that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are inflating their numbers by messing with the base building system. Which
I'm 30
is
hours
cool.
in, and I'm only into like the second mission in Diamond City. I'm not very far on the main mission, I don't think.
Oh wow.
I'm a little bit further behind than you then.
I mean, you can just focus on the main storyline. I mean, unlike Fallout 3 pre-DLC, you can keep playing the game when you finish it.
Oh yeah, it doesn't just end.
I'm glad that Bethesda realized that was a major problem for an open world game. It's like, what if you beat GTA 5 and suddenly, all right,
Just no more playing for you.
please uninstall the game now. That wouldn't be very fun. And so at least they have that. So you can certainly mess with some of the side stories afterwards, if you were to do that. But the side stories in Bethesda games certainly are probably the best part of them.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually agree because I've just had a look at Steam. I'm 72 hours into it, and I've not even completed the first Minuteman mission. I've not even triggered the
what are you
Brotherhood of
doing?
Steel mission.
Have you made your character yet?
Well, this is the thing. This is actually my second time playing it.
Oh, really?
Because the first character I made,
He's still
didn't know what I was
pre-war.
doing with. Yeah, I didn't know what to do with the character creator or how to pick skills and everything. So I ended up with a character that was good at absolutely nothing. And it made it really, really difficult to get through the main story because there were a lot of things that you just can't do. Like, he wasn't particularly good with fast shooting, wasn't particularly strong, so he didn't have good melee either. And charisma wasn't high enough to do most of the settlement stuff, so I just started again.
So, you
So my
euthanized
second
him.
character, I've just been spending the whole time exploring. So looking at every single, like trying to make every single discovery possible, like all the different points of interest, trying to uncover all of those.
Yeah, the
And I've
Explorer
realized,
perk, I think it is.
yeah, just trying to find all of the like landmarks on the map and just uncover everything. And what I've found out is that you do just happen to just trigger a lot of side events and side missions that completely unintentionally, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think so far I've found 3 different companions by just wandering around, which I had no idea, like, why or how they were there. And apparently, I was talking to a friend of mine, he was talking about the Institute, so that's another big, like, plot thing. I actually apparently went to one of the buildings in the Institute, because he was just, as he was describing it, and he was talking about one of the things that you can do there. I actually went to one of the places in there, and I haven't even got far enough into the story where you should have gone there to begin with. And he's just like, how have you done all this before? And I'm like, yeah, no. Then you got to do this thing, this, and then that bit's done. And it's just like, oh.
Well,
I don't want to spoil anything, but it's just like...
You just wandered into the
Wandered
story.
in.
Well, to clear things up, without spoiling it, the Institute isn't technically on the map, really.
No, but it's one of the labs that's related to the whole Institute story. Which is
was it like
not something.
Was it like
Yeah,
a
it wasn't the
laboratory?
actual institute itself. It's like a lab that's I believe it's in
It's like in the middle of the map,
it's
right?
yeah, it's somewhere near the middle of the map.
Okay.
And
That's actually
that
really interesting
is
that you managed to
related
get
to-
there.
yeah, I just wandered around. So I found a lot of the map by just walking into it, and I've honestly just been going from camp to camp, clearing them out, like killing super mutants and raiders. Just to level up my character so that I could get max charisma, because that's not something that I considered at the beginning. So all of the like character interactions I'm missing out on. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna grind and level up my charisma so I can do that stuff.
Let me stop right there.
Yeah, the 4 possible character interactions.
Yeah. So
that all have the same result.
this is the dialogue system in character interactions is probably people's biggest complaint, besides like the obvious, it's buggy, whatever. Out of all the times that I've used charisma, only 2 of them have been not just to get more caps. There's been getting one person off drugs and getting another person off drugs.
Oh, right, okay.
Every single other time there's any sort of charisma check is, hey, give me more caps. No, I want more caps. No, I want even more caps. You know, it's like 1, 2, 3. And then, all right, here's all the caps. Congratulations. You know, and that's as far as the charisma goes, which is really boring. Because I feel like there's a lot more potential there.
But I feel like the whole like relationship aspect of it as well is something that I guess if I don't have the charisma to pass those checks, I'm probably missing out on, right? Am I safe to assume that, or am I just wasting my time with it?
They're technically charisma checks, but they're pretty low level. So if you have like a charisma of probably 5 or 6, you wouldn't have any problem with it.
Right, so it's a good thing that I'm grinding because I started off with charisma of 1. So...
I mean, from what I remember, because I haven't opened it up in about a week, is that you only need charisma to do the flirt or the romance. And the only reason you would have a romance is to get the comfort well-rested or something. It's like a secondary well-rested perk, which is like a temporary perk that gives you more XP once you have a full night's sleep. But otherwise, even if you don't romance them or you fail it, you'll still be at the highest like affiliation with that companion, so you'll get their unique perk, if that makes any sense.
Right, okay. Yeah, okay, now I can see now. Yeah, so it's 2 separate things then.
Every companion has their own unique perk once you get to the highest level with them. Like, I think Preston Garvey has like high energy resistance or energy damage resistance or something like that. McCready has extra like automatic weapon damage, that type of thing. And you'll get that regardless if you romance them or not. The only benefit you get from romancing them is saying, oh man, you're the best, or you sleeping with them. Sorry, you don't actually sleep with them. If you go to sleep and they're within like 100 feet, you'll get that secondary extra XP boost for the next 20 minutes of gameplay or whatever. It's just, a little bit more than if you just slept on your own, sort of. So if you want those types of things, then by all means go ahead and romance. But you can say, like even in the dialogue, you can say, well, I'm still grieving my dead husband. And then they'll be like, okay, we're still awesome friends though. So that seems to work out just fine.
Yeah, I can see why people would have complaints about that now.
Felt like clearing that up.
Because yeah, I've been going into this completely blind. I haven't been looking up anything at all, so I had no idea about that.
Just sort of, I don't know, saving you time, perhaps.
There you go.
Depends what you want to do. Ctop, have you romanced any characters yet?
Oh, nope. I've just been like rolling with my dog the whole time.
What a neck beard. Or something, something, I don't know.
I feel like, wouldn't I be more inclined to romance virtual characters?
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. It's like, man, I don't need a relationship with the Fallout character. I got a dog, man.
Yeah, but I wonder if you can romance Curie.
I don't even know who that is.
I've heard you can.
She's a Miss Nanny, a robot.
Oh, okay.
The flying robot. The quote-unquote female version of like a Codsworth. She's awesome.
Yeah, because I was just rolling with the dog. I had Piper for a little bit, and then I told her to go home, and I got the dog. Oh, no, I had Nick Valentine for a while. Okay, that guy's awesome.
Nick's probably the best companion.
Mm-hmm.
He's really cool. And he has a pretty interesting backstory.
Yeah.
Which is pretty rare.
I haven't even met Nick yet.
You haven't met Nick?
He's in Diamond City.
No, I've gotten to Diamond City,
Okay.
and I've started the quest to go and find him.
All right, go meet Nick.
Yeah.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah, probably my favorite companion because he seems to have like a genuine.
It's funny, but he's the most human one.
Yeah, I would say maybe not an arc necessarily, but he does have some sort of because backstory is revealed and sort of dwelled on in some way. He does have that sort of depth to him, which is good.
Mm-hmm. I feel like he has more of a connection to the main plot than the other characters. Like he'll actually have insight onto things as opposed to just following you around and occasionally saying something.
Yeah,
which he does, but you know.
Yeah, because I've noticed, like, I've been traveling. I was traveling with the dog for a while, and then I found Kate, and I've realized that in some situations she says things, but they're just sort of mild reactions. There's nothing really deeper than that, and so I was wondering if other companions do actually provide like more info.
They all have actually remarkably unique kind of remarks that they'll say about the environment or whatever, but not often about the main storyline. If you're taking a companion with you, I think Nick Valentine is one of the exceptions where he actually has particular lines that relate to sort of later game stuff because he relates to it. But there will be characters that'll say things specific about certain areas that, you know, in Skyrim, pretty much all your characters, and this happened before, especially if you use some of the multiple follower mods, which it gets really hilarious because they'll all say the same line. You know, you go into a big cavern, and you know there's a skylight or a hole in the ceiling or something with light shining through, and like, have you ever seen something like that before? But then if you have 3 followers, like, have you ever seen? And it's like
say the same thing.
It totally removes any curtain of uniqueness there. But then the characters in Fallout 4 will say things much more unique, but remarkably improved in that area, even though it's not really required.
The line that I've heard Kate say the most is, something doesn't feel right, can we get out of here? I can't do her accent, otherwise I would. And that's probably because I've been chasing down Deathclaws for half the time I've been with her, so I guess that might have something to do with it.
Should I do my Kate impression?
Let's hear it. I don't know who Kate is.
Something doesn't feel right.
Oh, yeah. Is she Irish?
That's pretty close. Yeah.
She's Irish.
I want an Irish companion. Awesome.
She's an Irish girl.
Would you mind if we got out of here? Something like that.
It just sounds like Shrek.
He's
no,
Scottish.
see, I didn't know that she was supposed to be Irish, because at first, like, her accent was like, it's a mix of Irish, Scottish, and Welsh in a lot of places, and it's just like, I don't get it.
Also known
and then
as
she just
England.
outright says that she's Irish. She just outright says it. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's what it's supposed to be.
Well, you don't know what accents will sound like in 200 years, you know.
There's. I think the other thing is, like, there's a lot of Irish pubs in that game.
Oh yeah, dude, they're in Boston.
Like a lot of clover leaves and leprechauns and all sorts of stuff. Well, there is actually a perk related to the Leprechaun, which was interesting. Maybe that's because it's Fallout 4. I don't know.
I'd want it to be, instead of the unknown stranger, it's just a leprechaun jumps out and starts punching people. Just jumps on their face. That'd be great.
I was trying to think of a pun with that, but I can't get anything. I'm running
It's
short
like
on
that guy
puns.
from WWE. Tiny little Irish. I can't remember. I don't even watch it often enough, but it's just I remember that. It's like randomly he'd come up and hit people in the face with a shillelagh.
Well, isn't that what anyone would do in their situation? So, Fallout 4,
Yeah.
I think that pretty much sums it up.
So something I've been thinking about like a lot lately. I was thinking about this with Star Wars Battlefront. Is the idea that if the previous games in a series didn't exist, like how would the reception of that game be different? Like if the previous Star Wars Battlefronts or Fallouts had never existed and this game just came out as a standalone, like how would they have skewed people's perceptions of it?
Well, let's say for instance, I think Fallout 4 was made probably more popular than it was because of Skyrim, which was still in recent people's memories, or people's in recent memories, whatever, English. So, like, let's say, for example, that Bethesda never made Fallout 3, and I know they didn't make Fallout New Vegas, but let's say Fallout New Vegas didn't exist. So, they had bought the IP from, who was it? Obsidian?
Yeah.
Or there was another,
Wait, no. New Vegas was Obsidian.
yeah, they made that, but who? Well, it doesn't matter. But bought it from the original owners, and then their first foray into Fallout was Fallout 4. Let's assume there was a previous Fallout 3, and all they had to go on as far as people's expectations of what the game was going to be was Skyrim. To basically debase my kind of point off yours is, yeah, how well would Fallout 4 do if all people had to go on was Skyrim?
Mm-hmm.
You think it'd be a better impression?
If we're using Skyrim as the previous game that they've made in this case, then it would still do pretty well. It wouldn't have that sort of fan hype around it, obviously, but based on the success of the previous game, people would be more inclined to pick it up. I don't know if it would have affected its success all that much, but certainly it wouldn't have had that hype around it. Not as much hype anyway.
Or do you think people's expectations would be lower?
They would probably be lower, yeah.
Because there's less nostalgia for Bethesda's Fallout games, probably.
Well, I mean, it relates to what we were talking about earlier with the whole, like, relationship stuff as well. Like, people wouldn't have a previous, like, dialogue system and interaction system to base on.
Yeah, they wouldn't have something to compare it to. That's interesting, because I was thinking about just as, like, a brand new IP, but I was thinking, that's interesting thinking about if, like, 3 in New Vegas didn't exist, and this was just coming from the older Fallout games, which I assume the majority of this current generation didn't play.
Mm-hmm.
Then how they probably would. Oh, actually, that's interesting too. Comparing it to Skyrim, because you're saying that people still have that connection, and then I guess people would just be initially saying, "Oh, they're just making a Skyrim but with guns because it's another open world Bethesda RPG."
Yeah,
but
because the Bethesda RPG formula is so kind of common now in their games. It's like, oh, is Fallout 4 an RPG? Well, it's a Bethesda RPG.
Yeah. You get choices, but do they matter?
Yeah, it's less RPG, more action. But I wouldn't really call it an action RPG either. It's more of just like a looting.
It's a Bethesda
simulator.
RPG. I think it gets its own classification system at this point.
Yeah.
It's chronic hoarding syndrome simulator, that's what it is.
I've heard of a settlement that needs our help.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Go to this settlement, kill ghouls or super mutants, and then Skyrim, go to this dungeon and kill draugrs or whatever they were.
Yeah.
It's like, you were the chosen one, but for, because of that.
I mean, I guess it's not really that deep of a question, whether, well, I guess maybe people's expectations would be more realistic with Fallout 4 because they had never seen what Bethesda could do with Fallout.
That's true.
So maybe they'd be like, all right, well, I'm guessing it's going to be as buggy as Skyrim.
Yeah, because I still think that I'm trying to remember my opinions of the dialogue system in Skyrim versus Fallout, like Fallout 3 in New Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Because out of all 3 of those games, the story I was engaged with the most was definitely a Fallout 3. In fact, that's the only one I ever finished.
Yeah, same.
And I don't know.
Still haven't finished Skyrim. even though I love it.
Oh yeah, I spend more time just modding that game than actually playing it.
Same here.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, should we talk about other games, or what do you guys want to do?
Yeah, I think that's Fallout 4 is just this huge circle of, well, what if this happened? What if this happened?
It's mixed opinions and hypotheticals.
So you mentioned Battlefront.
Yes.
It's been how long since release? 3 weeks? Something like that?
Yeah, 4 weeks. 'Cause it came out on the 17th of November.
Okay. Yeah, so almost a month.
Yep.
What do you think about that after being out almost a month?
I'm super conflicted. I every time I play it, this is what started that train of thought earlier. Because every time I play it, I just think about Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2, and think, how cool would this be if this was just that with modern with the new Battlefront graphics? Because it is hands down probably one of the most beautiful looking and sounding games I've ever played. Like, I think visually, I like it more than Witcher 3, which was my previous favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't change the fact that the card system is dumb. There's no server browser, limited maps.
So it's only matchmaking?
Yep. It's only... Oh, no, you can... Yeah. But yeah, there's no server browser. You just click this... I want to play this game type. You can select a map, but then oftentimes you can't find matches, especially in the non-peak hours. People were saying that, guys, you gotta understand, they're not just doing a reskin of Battlefront 2. They're trying to make their own game, and I applaud them for that, for not just simply just remaking the game. But it's EA, and they have this habit of stripping features and dumbing down concepts and simplifying things. Again, it's supposed to be a casual shooter. It's not going to be a very competitive shooter. That's not the market they're aiming for. But it just feels like when you're playing the game, I don't know, I get this feeling that I'm not actually doing anything. It just feels like I run out, pick up this random power-up, I use it, and then I die. And even with I'm playing with other people I know, that it's just not having an effect on the game, just because I don't think the design and layout of the maps, like, there's a huge problem with the spawn points, that people are like, oh no, they'll fix it after the beta, and they didn't really end up doing anything about it, which was kind of disappointing.
That excuse needs to go away, because in theory it's true, or it makes complete sense, but in practice it doesn't. Because I mean, yeah, if it was maybe 6 months from release, I might say, yeah, they might tweak that. But it was only the beta was in October.
Yeah, it was like a month.
It was a month away.
And they had the one map, or they said 2 maps, and it was the only difference I saw was on the Hoth map. They changed some of the spawns and like the travel time of the walkers, and other than that, I couldn't tell anything was different.
And like it took, well, kind of related to EA, but like Battlefield 4, I would say is finally where it should have been on launch 2 years later. After so many massive patches, it still has some problems, and the community is still up in arms about things, but it took a long time to have some of those things fixed. So I wonder if the same case is going to be for Battlefront, which was DICE Sweden, or DICE Stockholm, I should say, who's a really talented studio. But I have a feeling that EA might have pushed. You think the game from what's there is polished? It's just not much.
I think it's polished. Like, I haven't. It runs wonderfully on my mediocre system. I haven't had any problems with it. A couple times I've gotten crashes just when like I alt tab out during a game, but that's inherent with some games. It's a great game. It's just not fleshed out. I feel like in another year or two, once they have a crap ton of DLC out, and if I break down and buy some of those, then yeah, I'll feel like it's a fully fleshed out game and worth the time.
Right.
But by then they'll expect you to pay what, $120, $150 to play this game, to play this multiplayer, online only, casual shooter.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have an audience by then. It'll, like, right now on PC, I've seen the numbers, and it's just not performing very well, because people are. I don't know if EA is noticing that people are finally seeing that what they're doing is bullshit, but I guess we'll see in a year or two when I don't know how much DLC they're coming out with, but the game launched with 4 maps. I mean, that in itself.
Well, I've heard it wasn't technically 4 maps. It was just that the game modes that people want to actually play happen to be on those 4 maps. Is that true?
Yeah, the main game modes are on those. The other maps are the same planets and same kind of biomes. They're just different structure.
So it's
So
kind of
visually, it feels like 4 maps, even if they're different.
true, yeah. So it's sort of like Bad Company 2, where it's like, oh, we have 15 maps, but like it's only really 5 because they're just different parts of the same one.
Mm-hmm. But I just don't understand the lack of server browser. I don't know why modern games are doing that. It's ridiculous. I don't understand it. Like, even the stupid Battlefield one where they made you do it in your web browser, which again, I don't know why they did that, and then launch the game every time we want to join a game. I don't understand that. I don't understand this trend.
Well, Panzer, have you played Battlefront?
I haven't touched it since the beta, so I've not played the release version. I mean, I had similar thoughts on it as well. Like, it didn't seem to have a hell of a lot to it. It's a competent shooter, I'll give it that. Like, it works as a shooter, and it has that sort of sense of scale that Battlefield games and Battlefront to a degree had as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I just felt that it looks and feels like Star Wars, and if you're a fan of it, you'll enjoy it aesthetically. But there isn't a lot to it as a game.
If it didn't have the look, sound, and feel of Star Wars, no one would play it. It would suck.
Exactly.
Like, they wouldn't even have bothered to make it.
Yeah, like when I genuinely think about, what if this wasn't Star Wars? What if it was just a generic kind of IP?
Like space shooter, Space Marines.
And I thought to myself, well, it sounds really good and it looks really good.
But does it taste really good?
I don't think I would have interest in it. I mean, if I'm really honest, I don't think I would have any interest in it. My interest is because it's Star Wars and it feels very authentic. And the fact that they scanned the props from the movies and made it look like the movies is certainly incredibly fantastic.
That's the most frustrating thing, because so much effort obviously went into it. Like, they knew what they were doing. They made this beautiful game that no one wants to play because the game in itself is shallow, and it feels like it's patronizing. Like, it feels like EA or DICE, or whoever was in charge of the actual game design, had no idea what they were doing, and were just going off of the opinions of very casual gamers. And I just feel like it was wasted effort. So I'm thinking the sequel to this game is going to be much better.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's going to be in a couple years, and it's going to cost you $120.
I feel like the effort that went into Battlefront might possibly not be wasted if they spun off into sort of different games. Not like Battlefront 2, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 1942. Or sorry, Battlefront 1942. But like, what if they remade a new pod racing game? What if they made a new...
Or Jedi Outcasters. Jedi Academy.
What if they worked with BioWare to make a new Star Wars RPG? What if they worked with creating a space-only shooter? I feel like they could spin off these various aspects with the team that's very experienced with creating these, again, extremely authentic feeling worlds and environments and stuff, and created these sort of separate, smaller titles that may have a really big draw. Because the thing that I've been hearing all the time is Battlefront, the new one, is not hardcore enough for people who care about game balance and game mechanics and strategy and all that stuff. But it's not casual enough for people to just be like, I'll play some Battlefront. It's like, it doesn't appeal to either side.
They're trying to make too many people happy.
Yeah. And in fact, make no one.
They need a focus. That's a great point, because it's a lack of focus. The game feels like it's not bad that it feels like nothing else, but I can't really relate it to anything because it just feels like I'm not having fun when I play it. Despite, again, like I said, the only reasons I feel like I'm having fun is because of the Star Wars feel to it.
Mm-hmm. And it's sort of, I mean, to be completely clear, playing video games in multiplayer, nothing really happens. But there has to be that sense of satisfaction that keeps you playing. Like when I play Battlefield 4, which I still play after all these years, even though I have premium, I play the same map that I've played like 3 million times because the guns are very satisfying to use. When I score that multi-kill, or I do a flank, all that stuff is extremely satisfying on a personal level. There's a great feedback, or emotional feedback when playing the game. And so even though, oh no, we lost a game, and that round may have been 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I don't feel like, oh man, what did I do? What a waste of 30 minutes. I think, all right, that was fun. Now I'll do something else. But like from what you're explaining with Battlefront, it's like, wow, I played that round for 20 minutes. Nothing happened. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I shot some people and I died. Even if I did really well, even if we won, I just feel empty inside. Oh God.
Oh God.
Oh no. But yeah, that's a great point. If you're playing the game for that feeling of progression, like especially multiplayer games, you want to feel like you're part of a larger team, accomplishing a goal. Mm-hmm. And I just don't get that feeling
because it's so drop in and drop out type of gameplay. That's probably because when I played the beta, I did feel like that. I was having loads of fun during the beta because it was so new. It was a novelty.
But once you've played the beta, you don't need to play the rest of the game because that's a comment I've seen a lot. That people say they got their fill with the beta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like it wasn't incredibly expansive in the beta, but it was just like that was like with how much content there seems to be in Battlefront, the full-priced $300 game. It does feel like, you get 90% there by just playing the beta. Mm-hmm. Sort of. Like you get the majority of what you're looking for.
It's like it's close enough, really.
Yeah.
Close enough to the finished title.
Yeah, like getting the store brand
that's what I got
Lucky Charms is good enough.
You take that back, you son of a bitch.
For some people. But maybe you don't want to buy the full $3 full price box and get the stupid toy that you're 25 years old. Why is there a toy in your cereal? Anyways, I feel like we're done with that. Mm-hmm. What other games have you guys played? Panzer? Ctop? I've played nothing besides Counter-Strike.
Let's see. I guess I'll just go through my list. I guess Elite Dangerous, Don't Starve, Shipwrecked, Star Wars Battlefronts, Anno 2205, Kingdom.
Kingdom is good.
Kingdom was good, and I'm glad the developer is making more content for it. Because initially they had no plans for that, but it's I read somewhere that the game paid for itself in its first week, so the developer came out and said that they're actually going to make more content, which is great because once you learn all the mechanics, it's a very short game that you can beat in an hour. Mm-hmm. Once you learn the mechanics. Yeah. Like it took me, I think, like 19, 20-minute episodes to beat it, but the last run was just like 3 or 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm. That seems kind of similar with...
That's one of my favorite... What's that?
When you were describing the game, well, especially like the developer and it paying for itself, reminded me of Game Dev Story, which was a super addicting game. And once it finally went live, it paid for itself in like 26 hours or something. And then that was a similar case where the developer's like, no, the game's finished. I don't know what are you guys talking about? But this was right before the next generation were coming out. And so they added on, once the game had sold really well, they added on, I think like another 3 quote-unquote generations of consoles to develop for. Because, like you were saying, that mechanic it takes you a long time to learn, but once you learn it, the game is of no challenge, pretty much. It's like, just make an MMO, and you're rolling in billions of dollars. And so it's not really a challenge, even if you do fail, a couple games, or you get a low meta score. It's not that big of a deal. So just remind me of that, which is a great game, by the way. I love the aesthetic of that.
Oh, the game
Dev Story. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I can't quite remember that one.
Anyways, sorry. I'm in a very distracting mood. Panzer, what have you played?
Let's see.
I need names, damn it.
A bit of Elite Dangerous, actually, as well. Trying to do the Horizons beta. The expansion's coming out, but it's been having some issues downloading, so I still haven't been able to try that. I did play Mordheim, though, which came out of early access recently.
That's a 40K?
It's a Warhammer Fantasy sort of... If you remember Vermintide, that
Yes.
came out before that. It's set in the same sort of timeline as that. In that Mordheim is another one of those cities that's being taken over by
Something.
yeah, one of those. There's a certain resource, right? There's a certain resource in called Warpstone, which all of the racers want to get, and it's coming out of the ground in Mordheim. Essentially, like this is just a summary of the plot, but that's why they're all in there fighting for it. And you have this. It's a squad based, like turn-based strategy game, and
Is it like XCOM type thing?
it is. I would say actually it's quite a lot like XCOM in the sense that you do have you start off and you have to sort of put your squad together and level them up and train them and so on and keep them alive, because you can get really attached to the really good characters. I can see that happening very much later on, but the game is hard. Like it makes it very difficult to keep people alive. You need to be very aware of not just the rules of the game, but just how intricate the actual maps are, because looking at it from a top-down perspective, it's very hard to actually see where all the different routes to travel around are, because you can go from balconies and rooftop kind of areas to ground level or even drain level as well, like it's sort of lower. So you really have to be aware of how much movement is possible per round, so that you don't get flanked and backstabbed, especially by the Skaven, who can get into some of these really tight locations really quickly. So it's a very difficult strategy game, but I'm quite addicted to it, actually.
So I have a question. With the way it's turn-based, is it like on a round basis, or is it like a continuous world? Because in my mind, because I haven't played XCOM, but in my mind, I'm thinking of Wasteland, which is turn-based in a squad, but it's sort of this continuous world that you play through. Is it sort of like an encounter system? Sort of?
I'm trying to think if there's something like that. Okay, so how it actually works, it goes from round to round, right? So you have a main camp area, and then from there you can conduct different missions. So you'll have a map and you can pick and choose which missions come up. If you don't like them, you can wait a day and see what comes up again. And there are other things as well. There's like a sort of small business management aspect to it, because you do get contracts for Warpstone. So certain buyers will want a certain amount from you, and you can deliver it to them to get resources. So by completing some missions, you get the resource to send off to them, and it's time limited. Like currently I've got a contract that's 10 days, so I have 10 days to deliver a shipment of Warpstone, and there are certain missions that will come up in that time that will give me a chance of doing that. So by completing certain missions, it comes in as a reward that you a certain amount of Warpstone. So it's kind of a cross between that sort of strategy and sort of management aspect of things. But the actual turn-based stuff in combat, I would say it's very similar to XCOM in that it goes from fastest character first instead of, faction by faction. So if you have a really quick character, they always go first in that turn. But if you have two characters, whether like one from your squad and one from the enemy squad that are really quick, it'll go from your team to their team just, once you end that character's turn. So it is closer to the sort of XCOM way of doing things. Yeah, I would say that would probably be the closest comparison.
Okay, yeah, so the combat speed mechanic sounds familiar with Wasteland. Yeah, it goes out of sync, but it goes by sort of the combat speed stat for those particular characters.
Yeah, the turn basically just ends once every character has moved or done an action. But it's interesting in the sense that it's not a sort of traditional grid system as well for the movement, because you basically play it as a third-person game. So you take control of the character and you can use your W, A, S, and D to move your character around, and that will, based on how many sort of zones your character moves, that will minus from the actual action points. So you can get very precise with the sort of movements, but it actually is only like sort of pseudo-precise, because it's a sort of obscured grid in a way. So if you move a certain number of blocks anyway, it's still going to count as like 3 squares of movements, but it doesn't actually look like it is.
Mm-hmm.
Which is an interesting way of doing things. It makes it look more realistic, I guess, but it's still kind of your traditional hex-based or grid-based system. It's just very obscured. But I'm enjoying it. It's a very unforgiving game.
I have it. I just haven't played it yet. Now it sounds like I should.
And that's called Mordheim?
Mordheim,
Yes.
City of the Damned.
City of the
Yeah.
Damned. Yeah, I'd heard about this before, and it's just I think I'd seen some gameplay, and those types of games typically don't resonate with me. So
Yeah, especially for me because I have
wrote it off.
no idea about that universe. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, like
Well, the good
Vermintide
thing
was
is
just
you
completely alien to me.
Yeah, I think in similar sense to Vermintide, you don't actually need the background to really understand it. I mean, it helps with Mordheim to kind of understand sort of the basic rules of tabletop, so you're not completely lost. But other than that, you don't need like the background and the lore or anything, because it does give it to you as you play along too. And it's pretty, I would say, as far as like story goes, it's pretty accessible.
It's a really good-looking game
Yeah, it is.
from the screenshots.
I mean, okay, in some cases the graphics can look a little bit old, like it's on an older engine, but otherwise,
But the art direction.
it's not a bad looking game. At least aesthetically, they've nailed it.
Mhm.
Everything looks like it belongs.
So, anything else?
Panzer, you played Planetbase, correct?
I did. I couldn't really get into it though.
Could you describe?
I mean, I tried it,
Planetbase?
but it just wasn't my thing.
Planetbase is a kind of base building planet colony simulator game where you basically land on. There's 3 different planets. There's like a Mars-looking planet, an ice one, and then a atmosphereless moon.
Mhm.
And you land with a small group of colonists, and you basically build up from there. And you control. You don't directly control the colonists, but you give them tasks like build this, mine this, etc. They had a closed beta back in October, and then it came out in October. I was confused because initially I thought that the game was coming out to early access and content would be added, but it ended up just coming out fully. And I think the developer said they have no interest in adding content, even though I'm pretty sure it sold pretty well.
I wish they would just say like, "We'll see how the game does." At least.
Yeah, I mean, the game did pretty well, and I like even mod support would really extend the life of the game. It reminds me a lot. It's basically Banished, but in space.
That sounds really cool, actually.
Yeah, it was fun, but basic.
Yeah.
Because because you can build your colony, like there's achievements to build like a colony of 300 people, but once you're up to like 50 people, you're just going to repeat the same steps. You're going to need dorm, sick bay, biodome to grow food, oxygen generator. You're just going to basically just copy and paste the same sections over and over again.
Then that sounds exactly like Banished, where it's like once you know the pattern, the game is piss easy.
Yep. The initial rush, because the planets do ramp up in difficulty, and you have fewer people, fewer resources, but once you get that done, like you can load up the hardest planet and have a successful colony in just a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
That's assuming the terrain generation doesn't dick you over immediately.
Yeah, I've had a couple times where literally I can't go anywhere. I'll build 2 buildings, and I'm like, well, that's it.
I actually did when I tried to do a playthrough of that game. The very first episode that I tried to record, I actually had to cut out a lot of tries because the number of times I had space that was either too restricted, like too narrow to build anything, or had resources that were in meaningless places that I couldn't get to, or even just the starting location of the lander was just in the way of things that I needed to do. And it's just like, it's so frustrating because it's like, that's not something I did wrong, it's something the game did wrong, you know? And it's just like, I want to...
That's the tough thing about procedural generation.
Yeah. So that really annoyed me. I only showed 3 different tries, but I actually had to do a lot more than that just to get a working base going.
Oh yeah, I did some save scumming where like I'd record an episode, but then everyone would die, and so I'd just load up a save.
I had my entire colony die because a meteor hit the entrance tunnel, and that was before I got a second entrance going.
Oh yeah.
So the first entrance tunnel I had, that got hit by a meteor, and then everyone died because they couldn't get back inside.
That's sort of one of my worries of doing playthroughs on things like Prison Architect or a lot of other roguelikes, is sort of that, how do you format a series where it's almost implied that you'll constantly fail and start over again?
Mm-hmm.
And I tried doing that with, what was it, The Forest? No, not The Forest. It was that top-down horror game. It was kind of like The Forest top-down.
Top-down
Darkwood?
horror game.
Darkwood, yes. Probably one of my favorite early
just-
access games that I have not played for a long time. And
I've
I tried
actually
doing a
just
series on
started
that.
playing that.
And I spent so much time like, all right, so I'm gonna do, each video is gonna be like 30 minutes or a life, and then like each season is a life, and it's like, I just eventually gave up on it because I was like, I like playing it, but trying to confine the way I played just made me not want to
Yeah,
play.
there are definitely some games that lend themselves to easy structured content. Like there's some games where I can record for 20 minutes, done. Record for 20 minutes, done.
Yeah.
But then there's some where like things just happen, or there are a lot of downtime. Like Elite Dangerous has a problem where there's a lot of downtime, so I'll record for an hour to make a 20-minute episode. So that also cuts into your time and say, is it worth doing this game if I have to spend that much time playing it just to get an episode out when I could play this other game and just record straight 20 minutes, don't have to edit it at all, and just upload it.
Right. Because I remember Dragas was talking about that issue for him. Like he'll have to record for like 5 or 6 hours to get one video's worth. Because sometimes just stuff doesn't happen, especially for survival games where...
Oh, yeah. A lot of waiting, resource gathering.
90% of your playtime is, all right, I'm hitting this tree.
Punching trees.
Hitting this rock. and just, especially for Ark, where it's like... Because my aunt, she might still play Ark.
Really?
Awesome. That was her kind of guilty pleasure. And she wouldn't invite me all the time.
How dare she enjoy video games?
Well, so she has 851 hours in Ark.
Jesus Christ. Whoa.
And she last played yesterday.
Man.
And she's been playing since release. Like an example of that is she would just do it while she was, like she would tame dinosaurs. I think when she was doing like, just cleaning up the house or reading a book or something like that. Because like the game is programmed downtime like that, like you were talking about. So at least she's not doing a Let's Play where, 9,000 episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Should be,
I don't know. I know people that have...
that like, watch time, though.
Episode 150 of Ark right now.
Yeah. Then you'll just lose track as a viewer.
Mm-hmm.
So
with things like that, that's actually something I've talked to Blitz a lot about, is the dangers of doing long series and the danger of releasing too many videos in one day. Is like there's some channels, I'm not going to name names, but there's a particular channel that's came out, and this Don't Starve Shipwreck came out, and he's been releasing like 4 or 5 episodes a day.
I think I know what that is.
The number of views varies like crazy. You'll have one episode with 5,000 views. The one after that will have like 10,000, and then it'll go down to like 2,000. It's because people aren't consistently watching through a whole series. What they're doing is occasionally clicking in if they happen to scroll by it in their subfeed. They're not watching episode to episode, so the retention's going to go down, the average amount of views go down, and their interest in the game and the ability to follow the game is going to go down.
Yeah.
So that's the hard part about doing too many episodes of a series.
Yep. And it seems like for me, 30 episodes is probably the most I'll ever get to. And I haven't completed too many games on my channels, but 30 seems like the most I can deal with, but also that viewers can deal with. Like there's a definite, like anyone who Let's Plays in any capacity knows that three parts in, those are where your real fans come in.
Yep.
But before that, it's like, oh, you search for Let's Play game XYZ, and then yours comes up. So it's part 1, part 2, maybe part 3 will show up in that search, and then that's where those views come from. But it's not like people watch 3 parts and then give up. It's just that they're trying to get a taste for what the series is going to be like.
Especially if they're just researching the game and maybe necessarily aren't interested in you as a personality. They just want to see gameplay. So of course they're gonna see just the initial episodes.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's tough, especially with longer games.
So how do we go from there? You're talking about downtime in games. You're talking about Elite Dangerous, and what was before that? Because I feel like we just went on a huge tangent. It was between Mordheim and survival games.
Oh, damn. I don't know.
If not, then I do have one game I want to talk about.
Bring it up. What you got?
Just Cause 3.
Oh.
You
I
guys
have
played
it,
that.
but I haven't played it.
You have it, but haven't played it?
Yeah.
Fix that.
I need to.
Although it depends if the game likes your computer.
That's true. I've heard they're having some issues.
I mean, for me, it happens to run fine. When I actually think about the kind of specs the game is working on, though, it isn't very positive, I would say. But I do have a friend of mine who's on an AMD 290X, and he runs the game at like 720p on lowest settings
Ouch.
and gets maybe 35 frames per second.
Oof.
Even though he has
It's unplayable.
he has a Intel Haswell 4670 or 4790 or something like that. So it definitely seems to be some sort of weird driver issue.
It is AMD's the game's having trouble with, right?
The majority of problems happen to be on AMD graphics cards, but I know people who have the same video card as me having huge issues. So it seems to be some really weird
correlation, but not causation.
True.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Words are hard.
But besides the occasion where maybe I'm like setting off the equivalent of 1,300 nukes, and the frame rate drops to like 20 FPS sometimes, it runs pretty smooth. And that's the majority of like my complaints is just the performance.
I don't know. I'm looking at Steam right now, dude. There are almost 4,000 positive reviews, 2,000 negative reviews.
Yeah.
That's pretty substantial. What are the problems people are having with it?
Bugs and performance. Yeah, that's the big thing.
Yeah,
performance.
That's the main thing. Yeah.
Which
I mean, for me,
some
I
people
get a
is
solid
unplayable.
60. So, I mean, it's a solid 60 until I go maybe to the major city when there's a lot of stuff just loading in.
Mm-hmm.
So initially it'll drop down to about 40-ish or so, and then after that it'll slowly pick up again. I do notice when I record it does drop a lot more, but that's kind of to be expected. But otherwise, just normal playing it, it runs at pretty smooth 60 FPS. And this is at high settings, not ultra. I haven't maxed everything out, it's just high settings. I did turn motion blur off though, which seems to actually help for some reason.
Yeah, motion blur is weird where it only seems to come up like 2% of the time. And even when I turn it off, sometimes it's still there. And it's like really strange how some of the graphics options play out. What I was going to say is that I feel like for my viewers, they subscribe to me because, I don't know, they can't get enough of me babbling about technical stuff. But just because we're talking about performance, I'm running a 980 Ti. I run the game 1440p, every setting, absolute highest settings possible. And I get 60 FPS. Occasionally it drops to 50 on average, something like that. But here's the thing, and this is like one caveat that maybe caveat isn't the right word, but one like particular aspect I try to talk about is like, does it look good enough for the performance it requires? Mm-hmm. And I don't think Just Cause 3 does. I mean, certainly the world is massive, but Just Cause 2's world was massive. And besides the cutscenes and the animations, it doesn't noticeably look better than Just Cause 2, which came out 5 years ago.
So you gotta assume that there's something else going on that's
there
sucking
has
up
to be something
the
else,
performance. Yeah. So is the world more alive, more NPCs, more of
I don't know.
Just things going on besides graphical issues?
The game looks great, but things like there's noticeable like tessellation, I would say, problems on terrain. Like this is I forget the game, maybe Crysis 3, where you move, towards the distance, or you're walking forward, or in this case, wingsuiting forward at high speeds. The terrain will morph as it's pulling in more detail from tessellation, which is really noticeable. It's not like, an LOD model loading in 3 miles away. No, it's like 200 meters away. And when you're really high up in the air, you notice that because, the game removes a lot of the vegetation. And so it's kind of made more obvious. And I guess that's really the majority of my complaints is just, the game looks great. Explosions look fantastic. I mean, they look like almost rendered, like particle animations in some cases. But
those look great. I've seen a bunch of GIFs on Reddit.
But like, it just doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't look like a game that came out in 2015, sort of. Which it's kind of my go-to complaint a lot of times. And I throw that at Fallout 4.
If you realize if you say that about every game, then there is no baseline.
Witcher 3 came out this year.
No game looks like 2015. How do you know that? Witcher 3 does look pretty.
Looks fantastic.
And Witcher 3 does have a lot more, I guess, like graphical detail in it than Just Cause 3. That's for sure. So I mean, I guess if you was talking about that as a benchmark, then yeah, Just Cause
So
3
it's all
doesn't
that
look as good as that.
wackiness. Wackiness takes a lot of processing power, dude.
Maybe,
You know,
maybe.
all that wacky ness.
I will
I don't
say
know.
my biggest disappointment is that the dialogue and writing and voice acting is unfortunately good. Because that was, I mean, Just Cause 2's dialogue was sort of almost like a cult favorite, sort of. Because everyone just loved Bolo Santosi when she introduced
Oh
herself.
god,
Uh,
I hate her voice.
yeah.
Sorry.
I don't even remember any of the story or dialogue of Just Cause 2 anymore.
But yeah, that's, I mean, joking aside, it's very much improved. The writing is good, and you actually care about the characters in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But the game is loads of fun. I have about 30 hours into it. The campaign is interesting. The grappling system, even without mods, is significantly improved. And it definitely sounds like they took feedback from, or maybe not feedback, but they looked at why people were modding and what people were doing with trainers and such, to incorporate those things in the vanilla game.
So it's the opposite of the Bethesda approach, and the modders will add that later. We don't need to do that.
I mean, yeah, you can have mods for like invincibility, but it's really hard to die in the game anyways. So, yeah, you can upgrade like the amount of grapples that you can place on things, the strength of the grapples, things like the ways in which you can fly or how you can use your parachute and stuff like that. But in general, starting out the game, you have 90% of what you would screw around with anyway. So it's a really, really great, it's a much better vanilla game.
Yeah, I would agree with
I
that.
would say than Just Cause 2.
Are you saying, sorry, I was trying to remember because I watched Total Biscuit's video on it. So, like you said, it's very fun just in the beginning. So, I think he was talking about like the lack of motivation to progress in the game because the unlocks don't necessarily improve or add anything. Am I thinking of the right game? I don't remember.
They feel so optional, and that's the biggest problem with the progression is that nothing is entirely necessary. In some cases, get some of the unlocks you get, particularly for rebel drops, not so much for the actual character gear, can make it easier to clear some of the big bases, but they're not entirely necessary, since if you really try, you really can take over just about any base on your own. Just using your C4 and your grappling hook. Like, you can do that.
To me, it's a good balance that they struck, because even though, I mean, sure, you don't have like practical motivations for doing all those side missions or anything, but a lot of times those trials or time trials and other challenges are pretty fun, assuming you're not trying to go for 5 gears or 5 stars at the beginning, because you will want to punch something when you're like 0.05 of a second off to get those unlocks. But yeah, you're right. You don't have to get really any unlocks to play the game. They're sort of little extras that may be worth it for some people. For me, I do them because I enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. You have to really enjoy like destroying things in that game, because I've noticed like a lot of the outposts and bases, they can have different layouts. Like the small outposts tend to be a little bit more copy-paste than the others, but the big bases are definitely kind of unique things. Like you've got a naval base that has a prison attached, or you've got mountainside sort of elevated runways for the air bases. They're unique in that way, and they all have different things to sort of destroy. But in the end, if you really just boil it down, it's just a matter of go to this base, blow up all the things that are marked for destruction, and then move on. And if you're not the sort of person that's actively looking for new ways to blow stuff up or destroy things, it's going to get very samey very fast. And that's sadly what's, I think, is the biggest thing that's wrong with it. I mean, the random encounters that you do get, like the sort of Red Dead Redemption style random encounters that do pop up, they do help to break up the monotony when you're traveling from place to place. But the wingsuit traveling sort of does that already, because you have to kind of be on your toes when you're traveling a lot.
Yeah.
It's the main objective stuff that is just really repetitive. The story is good, though. I mean, the story does vary things up decently enough, but it's just the clearing of each individual province just gets really repetitive.
Yeah, it's almost like too sandboxy for a lot of people. like GTA 5 is sort of a sandbox open world, but it's not, doesn't give you that much freedom. Like, you can't just, all right, I think I'll have a tank, so I'll have a tank spawned in front of me, and a jet is going to drop a shipping container full of a tank. You know, that stuff isn't going to happen in GTA 5. But in a sense, it is sort of, because there's a lot more limitations in GTA 5, that might cause people to be a bit more creative. But with the way Just Cause 3 is, because it's just like, hey, go to this place 20 miles away, however you want to get there, and just blow everything up. You know, it's like, it gives you so little limitations that it may be boring for some people.
And I think if we compare it to GTA 5 as well, even though GTA is an open world game that does give you a lot of freedom, it tends to sort of nudge you a little bit and say, look, here are some of the possible options that we've thought of. Try these.
Mm-hmm.
But Just Cause is like, look, this is your objective. Blow stuff up. And that's literally all of the direction it'll give you. It's not going to give you anything more than that.
Yeah, just do it however you want.
Yeah. And if you're not a very imaginative person, you're going to probably, I don't know, get into a helicopter and do like rocket runs on them over and over again till you get bored or shot down. Or, you know, whichever you find the easiest way.
Yeah, or if it's you go into a base and there's just a bunch of enemies, what do? Well, you jump down and you shoot them all. And it's like, well, yeah, you could, but that might be why you're finding it boring. Whereas you can fly in with a helicopter, jump underneath, hang from underneath, grapple everyone to the helicopter, pick them up, and then jump out of the helicopter so it crashes in the side of a mountain. You could do that too.
Yeah, needlessly elaborate evil schemes
but that
is the way to go.
Thought and creativity.
Yeah, I needed to take up the SAM site once, so I dropped a helicopter on it. It's not the most effective way of doing it, but it's more fun, and that's the whole point of the game, really. And if you're not the sort of person doing that, then it's not going to be fun.
Well, yeah, that's Just Cause 3 from me. I know that not everyone has the best luck with it. I happen to like it. I would definitely put it on your wish list and maybe hold out for a couple months if you think you might have problems. It is a very beautiful game, though. But I think that's all that we wanted to talk about. Thank you very much to Ctop and Panzer. You'll find their links in the description for their channels and stuff. This is no longer a regular thing, but we do it when we can. So thank you very much for listening, and we will see you soon.
Woo!
Woo!
Thank you very much. Good night.
Oh, were we supposed to say stuff?
If you want, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Go ahead.
I'm good.
Say something.
Bye.
Say something, Panzer.
Say something.
Something.
There you go. Good night, everybody.